Welcome, my name is Sam Davidson. I'm the CEO here at the Nashville Entrepreneur Center. So we're excited to host this event along with Hang On Health with Tina and everything. When she first called me and talked about this, I was like, absolutely, get it here, put it here, let's do this. When I took this role about a year and a half ago, one of the first questions I got was that of mental health and entrepreneurship. And I think it's one that unfortunately a lot of organizations like ours really haven't wanted to participate in. And the way I look at a lot of issues that are bigger than marketing, sales strategy, financial projections, when I look at things like this, there's a lot of conversations that I want, that I hope the Entrepreneur Center takes part in, helps lead. And so partners like Tina, partners like Hang On Health are very important for us. And so we're excited that this conversation gets to continue. We've had panels earlier this year. It's definitely something that we take seriously and know the realities of. So you guys have a great event plan. I love that this organization is launching and that we get to partner together. So thank you all for coming. If you've never been here before, please take a look around after this. Schedule a tour, see what it's like to get to work here every single day. We have hundreds of members, hundreds of advisors to help you start and grow your business. That's our mission. That's what we've been doing for 14 years. So part of how we accomplish that mission is by allowing folks like this to take up space here and to have conversations like these. So thank you all for coming. I love that we're doing this. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam. Sam has heard this over and over again, but he is the reason why I continue to pursue Hang On Health. And so thank you to him for not just encouraging me to do this, but it actually helped me find my new purpose when I was feeling really lost. So thank you, Sam. With that, I guess I should introduce myself. My name is Tina Stoyka, formerly Tina Phillips. In May, I got married, so it's still weird saying a new last name. And I just want to begin by thanking all of you so much for being here. As you know, building a company is hard, uncertain, and you never know if it's going to work out. And so you being here gives me the reassurance that I'm on the right path. So thank you. Also want to thank Allie and Bryan for being here. Bryan hailing all the way from Memphis just for this session. So thank you guys. Excited to hear your stories and really excited for them to hear your courage and vulnerability as you tell them. So thank you for being so brave. And then thirdly, I want to thank Justin Kelly in the back. And he is the owner and executive director of Fifth and Broad. He is obviously doing our videography, and I'm so excited to have one of the best in Nashville to do a very special event for me, my first event. And he is also coming in at a peak level sponsor. I'm sure you can figure out that's the highest. And I want to give him a minute or two to say a few words about why this organization is important to him.
Thanks. So I'm Justin, the founder of Fifth and Broad, and we are the easiest video company that you'll ever work with. That's who we are, and that's what we do. So yeah, I feel like that might have an effect on mental health and you're operating your business, simplifying different things. So we help simplify video and content production.
Well, there you go. Literally, when I said, okay, let's go, and it's at the EC, I didn't hear from him again. So that was very easy. In a good way, yes, yes. I don't think he was ignoring me. I do send a lot of emails, which Sam can attest to. So with that, I know we are starting a little late or quite late, so I want to just run through who I am and who Hang On Health is, since this is the first event, and then we're going to move on to the main party. Thank you to the EC for hosting, if I didn't already say that. And, oh yeah, social media challenge. So my handle is Hang On Health. And so the person who does the most tagging will win a $10 Amazon gift card. And that includes LinkedIn stories and feeds. So I'll have to figure all of that out later. So you'll get an email letting you know you won. So just a quick rundown on me. I'm going to make this real fast. I've been in business development for over 16 years now. I was in DC for 10. I moved here at the end of 2017. When I was in DC, I spent a lot of time in government affairs, state and local lobbying world. I grew a pretty good reputation and was successful, and I'll get to all of that and why that's important in a minute. And also at the time in DC, I thought that it was my life's calling to start a country music venue. So that's why I started coming to Nashville all the time. I had no idea what I was doing in the entertainment industry, but that was startup number one. Once COVID hit, there that went. I was on track, very close to closing 10 million in funding, and then the venues all closed, and so see you later. So company number one. Number two, I started in August of 2020. Here in Nashville, brand new city, brand new audience, and in a consulting role with clients that I hadn't brought over from another company, and to provide holistic sales consulting with a marketing and branding approach, working with small businesses and startups. About 9 months in, it was going really well, and then all of a sudden, my biggest client decided to black hole and stole $30,000 in services from me. That then led to the complete downfall of my mental health, and you'll hear about that all over time, so I'm not going to get into it right now. And then when I was really sad and depressed and not wanting to be here anymore, I had this idea to help other entrepreneurs, and so here we are, third startup, Hang on Health. We all know what the problems are of being an entrepreneur. You feel really alone, you feel confused, and you're scared. You don't know what's going to happen to your business. You don't want to fail. You don't want to disappoint anybody. You also don't want to fail in any of your relationships. And so who Hang On Health is that we empower entrepreneurs to build mental resilience through education, community, in order to build peak performance. I'll get into these another time, or ask me if you have questions. And then the only thing that I really ask of you guys will obviously do this, and when you guys ask questions, get out of your comfort zone. I want you to be vulnerable and honest and think of this as a safe space. If we don't open up and we aren't honest about what we're going through, we're never going to be able to help each other, and that's why we're here. We want to help each other through those raw stories. And then also, again, brand new, any kind of feedback, topics that you want to hear, please let me know, speaker ideas you have. And then finally, I do just want to differentiate Hang On Health from other organizations who have events where you talk about business challenges and what your solutions are. Yes, we will do that to a degree, but what really differentiates us is that you are going a step further to talk about the behind-the-scenes emotions. It's not just, my client stole $30,000 from me, I hired a lawyer, and this is how it went. It's how it made me feel. I don't want it to be a therapy session, that's not the point, but you do have to talk about what's going on and how you actually feel in order for us to help each other. So that's my spiel. And now I'm going to get into you guys. So I'm just going to introduce you real quick and then let you guys say your bio, because it's way more interesting when you do it than when someone else rattles it off. So Allie Williamson is the CEO and founder of Southern Domestic Diva, a commercial and residential cleaning company here in Nashville. And Bryan is the founder and managing partner of Flow Venture Labs that consults entrepreneurs on strategy. Go for it. Bryan, you want to start?
Yeah, that's our new tagline now. Yeah, I'm Bryan Barringer. I'm a third-generation serial entrepreneur. I don't know another type of life other than this. I was working my parents' and grandparents' retail businesses when I was 8. I mean, how much history do you want me to go into before I start jumping into, like... Yeah, okay. So Flow Venture Labs is a boutique venture studio, but also a coaching studio. So I coach, I mentor and coach startups, founders, anything, and kind of act as a therapist of sorts to CEOs. I definitely like to ask, how does that make you feel a lot? And we work on a lot of different things. We don't just work on the specifics of growing a business, although that is also where we spend an extensive amount of time. We also work on how we can turn maybe some of our what other people call disorders into superpowers and different things like that. We talk about depression, we talk about different things, but we also spend a lot of time on the general coaching of the business as well. So it's been a very rewarding transition over the last 4 years to become a coach from a lifelong founder. So it's really great because I'm like the uncle. I can just say, now go take your business. I don't have to go to sleep on it and wake up in the fetal position like I have with my businesses. So.
All right. Thank you, Tina, for having us. I just want to start with saying that I'm not very vulnerable with my story. And so just preparing for this has been like so transitional for me and very therapeutic, a lot of emotions and all. So I'm excited to be here. And just a big thank you to Tina for starting this so we can all protect our well-being, because that's what it all starts with. So I am Allie Williamson. I am the Chief Executive Diva at Southern Domestic Diva. We have a lot of fun with branding with our cleaning company. I started this company 10 years ago. I got the vision. I was in the kitchen with my grandmother at 9 years old. She was a huge Virginia Slim cigarette smoker in the 80s. You know, that was totally acceptable. We were in the cars and the kitchens while they were smoking. And I was just wiping that nicotine off the walls as fast as I could. And she convinced me that I was the very best cleaner there was. So I cleaned through high school, I cleaned through college, I landed a job with R.J. Young in sales here in Nashville and just knew that there was more for me. So I grabbed a bottle of Pine Sol and started a cleaning company. And here we are, 10 years later, we have 75 divas and divos that work for us. I'm very specific on what our clients call them. We don't hire cleaners or maids. We have divas and divos, and we are now in 2 states. I opened a branch in South Mississippi in 2019, and we're a women-owned small business. We do anything from residential, commercial, vacation rental, and within the past 2 years, I traded in these stilettos and got some steel-toe boots, and so now we are embarking on construction to contribute to all the development here. So very proud to be here. My hard hat and my vest are red, my boots are not. So you can definitely find us on a job site. It's like you got to carry the branding out. Yeah, most of the construction guys just say, just call the Divas. Maybe she'll bring a pie, you know.
You also bake and you have a cookbook.
While I was cleaning and Mossy Hattie was smoking all those cigarettes, she had at least 3 pecan pies in the oven, and so that has become the trademark of our business. So if you sign up for a clean, you get a pecan pie, and I mark it with it, and I actually brought y'all some this morning. Nothing like a little K-Rose syrup and butter early in the morning. It's winter season, sweater weather, let's eat it all, right?
Okay, well, thank you for that opening. Bryan, we'll start with you and kind of talk about, I think, you know, she just talked about it, but what inspired your business and maybe your trajectory over the years? Let's go there.
Yeah, I mean, one thing was I was tired of founding companies that didn't have enough resources around it to be successful. After being kind of in that space for so many years, I kind of started really less dreaming about and more kind of wanting to demand the resources that are around me, but they just weren't there. So after a rather extensive failing attempt at a business, I decided that I needed to start ecosystem building, and that's what I did. I started in Memphis and kind of worked through the system there, and then worked with Launch Tennessee and started building out more and more about what Flow Venture Studios really was. It was supposed to be pretty much just a venture studio, but it really became something a little bit more intimate than that, because the founders started asking me these questions that were really compelling to me, because they're questions that I've either asked myself and hadn't been able to find an answer for, or just didn't have someone to talk to about it that also knew what the trials and tribulations of being a business owner is all about. And so that's really where I kind of deviated a little bit from where my business partner wanted to take the venture studio, and he still runs part of that side, and I kind of run the business development and sales side, but also the mental awareness and kind of health and coaching and mentor side. And that, like I said earlier, actually coming through a lot of trials and tribulations that I went through between 2016 and 2019 with one of my failed businesses, which I'll tell you about today. That after that, realizing that I had something to contribute that was different than just saying, hey, here's what I did, here's how I screwed up, don't do that. Or here's what I advise, or here's people to talk to. It became more of like, I'm struggling with this, and I'm like, I hear you, I've been there. Well, what'd you do? And I said, I'll tell you what I did. And it might not be for you, but it was for me. And then we kind of, and I'll talk about this too, but we also, I'm a very late diagnosis of ADHD and autism. I've known I've had it my entire life, or actually I should say I suppressed the idea that I had it my entire life, even though I have 2 out of 3 kids that have it, and it's 92% hereditary. When I got diagnosed at 50, I went, oh yeah, now I know. My whole family went, duh. It was like they've known my entire life, right? So after so many years of also realizing that I had these other mental aspects, not conditions, not disorders, but mental aspects of myself that actually define my neurodivergence, things started to really click in place. And with today's world of information, I just kind of did a deep dive. I talked to my therapist about it. I got more information about it. And I started to realize from the earliest days that I had these, what I call now skills, which is most people just think that that means those people, generally have problems turning their brain off. Well, that means I have a lot of capacity. And that means I put that capacity to work today. And that's how I teach other entrepreneurs to look at these things that also have these same skills. Because about 7 out of 10 entrepreneurs I talk with are neurodivergent. And about 80% of those, I think, have all the skills to be more successful than the neurotypical founders do. And I can get into that some other time, but that's kind of like the first part of the story.
So one thing I want to back up on is that you're a third-generation entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So what did your parents, grandparents...
Which also means I'm a third-generation ADHD person, by the way. But, it was first diagnosed in 1790, so it's quite an old thing. But go ahead, what's your question? I cut you off, I think.
Just what is your family background? What did they do?
Yeah.
Did you see them as you were growing up and maybe took something away
I have some
subconsciously?
two really great stories about my grandparents. One, when my paternal grandfather died, this is well before I was born, this is in the mid-50s, at his funeral, all of these other gas station and GM dealers came up to my grandmother, which is the business that he had, Bobby, and said, oh, Carmen, I might get into a Louisiana accent here, apologize. Oh, Carmen, you can't handle that. That's too much. It's a man's job. And 2 years later, she won the Southeast regional most cars sold, right? So, yeah. So she taught me resilience and just kind of believing in oneself. And then my grandfather scolded me for working in his antique store, and I kept changing the prices. And he's like, why are you doing that? And I was like, because you can make more money, Papa. I mean, you can, you definitely. I mean, you're way undercutting these things. I was 9, by the way. Right? I'd already been going to work with my dad. He knew I had ADHD, although he didn't know what it was. But my mother tried to kind of suppress it at home. My father realized I needed to take him to work with me. And he was a salesman. So I kind of already understood pricing and some weird things that no 9-year-old should know. But then my grandfather kind of was like, but you got to understand, I want lifetime customers. I want longevity in my base. He didn't say those words. I'm using those words. But he said, look, I know my pricing and I know my people. I know my audience. And that was really enlightening too at an early age of understanding that I'm not in control of the narrative. The customer's in control of the narrative, right? So being an early child of entrepreneurship with the ADHD and everything really just made me never think of any other work for myself, because I've always said that I'd rather work 100 hours a week than punch a clock for 40, right? So it's just one of those things where I can't be in environments that relate to the corporate ladder. I've tried and failed at those situations, so.
I have a similar story where it was so slow and I just couldn't do it. Yeah. And that was one job I left. Yeah. Allie?
Those cubicles are not fun.
Oh,
They
yeah.
didn't work for my diva spirit. I'm like, there is more to this city to give.
There is not enough in a cubicle to put on an Instagram story.
Exactly. And if you know me, you know I love some Instagram.
Start following her and then you'll get that.
You'll understand it. Maybe now I'll be a little bit more raw and vulnerable with you.
Yes.
So yeah, my story started with my grandmother, but I literally picked up a vacuum cleaner and a bottle of Pine-Sol while I was working a full-time job with RJ Young. So I would go and clean houses after hours, on weekends. I would walk their dogs. I would even scoop their dog poop in the backyard. I would go and get their groceries. It's a complete sacrifice to get started. So once you dedicate all of this and you start and everybody's questioning you, hey, you're college educated and you're out here scrubbing toilets. And it wasn't just 1 year. I scrubbed toilets for the first 4 years of the business. So that in itself is just a slice of humble pie. I remember sitting across a conference room selling a $40,000 copier from RJ Young, and then the next Saturday morning, 8 a.m., showing up at like the VP's house to scrub their toilets. And so in that moment, you feel like very beneath, like, what am I doing, Allie? What are you building? But it's like pushing through and being positive. I feel like that was my motivation, is everybody kind of not understanding, being confused. Why are you doing this? And then coming from a background of two parents with amazing work ethic, and my dad was at Georgia Pacific for 35 years, a perfect employee, and he got fired from his job within 6 months of him letting them know that he was planning on retiring. That's when I knew. I was like, corporate America is not for me. I'm going to push through this, even if it takes scrubbing toilets. And by building that culture of cleaning with some of the women that now still work with me 10 years later, their kids work with me, their children are my interns, that in return was just the building of the culture of the business that I had to do. It's those first 4 years that are almost impossible when you start, that you just have to get through.
And I think that's the statistic, right? That if your business is successful, 3 years, 3 to 5 years, then you should be good. Should be good. For the future, yeah. So when do you think being self-aware, let me say, is crucial to mental health and to understanding yourself and your actions and your behaviors? And that's a topic that I do want to touch on a lot with Hang On Health. So when would you say that you started noticing some of those emotions and mental health struggles that you've been through? And maybe what are those struggles?
Immediately, because I'm such a passionate person, sometimes with so much passion into creating a brand like I did. If you look at my logo, she is exactly me. Like her waistline is my size, maybe not anymore, but her eyelashes, her spray tan, her, everything about her envisions me. So you come with all of this passion because you become the visionary of the business, and you come with that passion, and then that passion will take out to your team. So I was very reactive at first. I pulled some crazy stunts, and if y'all want to hear some of them, have some martinis with my girlfriends, because they'll tell you everything. Like, Allie, do you remember when you did this? Allie, do you remember when you did this? You have grown so much. I'm like, please don't remind me. So now I have a chief of staff, and she is my person. I call her and I tell her all of this passion and everything I have in this reactive manner, and then she takes it back to our team in a positive manner. Because I feel like when you are the visionary of a business and you are that passion, it is sometimes hard to be in that operational role as the HR role, because you have so much invested in it.
And can act a little irrationally.
Yeah, and
maybe jump at people a little.
Right. So, and dealing with cleaners not showing up, it's an everyday thing, and it's a different market with the service market. So being relatable to them as well and understanding their struggles.
Which then requires a lot of patience. Frustration on one side, patience on the other.
Absolutely.
Bryan?
Yeah, so I had to dissolve a business in 2018 that just was going nowhere, and it was quite an extensive, long failure. And then going into 2019, still kind of struggling what to do, and then COVID hit. I came out of COVID kind of understanding, after basically pulling my hair out for a year, being stuck in the home, being kind of stuck around, not being able to build anything. I was starting to help founders find their way in a variety of different ways, but I was lost. And I think through COVID and after I came out of the shell that was all forced upon us with the way we had to kind of inwardly look at ourselves over 6 or 8 months living at our homes, not being able to leave, I really kind of saw the sun for the first time in a different way, mentally, maybe even physically, of just realizing that I am not a failure just because my last business failed. And that's really a pretty big thing to hear. It's a larger mountain to climb to understand for oneself, because you define yourselves by your failures. And we teach ourselves and we tell ourselves as entrepreneurs we're better off by failing than we're off succeeding sometimes, and that's not BS. That's true. We do come out of failures better off than we do sometimes coming out of successes. In fact, we sometimes come worse off after successes. But that kind of understanding of why have I failed last time and why have I failed a few other times, And I kind of looked in the mirror, but also it was kind of a brightening day for me, because looking in the mirror and saying, you're the reason you failed. I can look back at a lot of the decisions I made and realize that I wasn't in touch enough with myself to make the right decisions for myself in a lot of cases and for my business. I mean, it's not like I was some raging lunatic that was running around not being able to control my emotions and everything else, but I do think I had imposter syndrome quite often, because, I mean, I hate saying stuff like this. I mean, if you look at my resume, I've got a quite extensive bit of experience in a lot of different industries. I've put myself in a lot of different places. I shouldn't feel like an imposter, but I did, and I still do at times. And less so these days, but more so when I'm kind of venturing into new things. But that was also defining me for too long. And I think coming out of COVID is when I realized I got to stop.
So you said your failure no longer defines you.
Right.
How did you, or what did you do to get there?
Can I tell the story?
Yes.
It might take a few minutes, just 3 or 4 minutes, or 30. I actually teach a whole semester class about this failure story too, so it can take 6 weeks if you wanted to. So, I mean, real quickly, I had an idea, a technology idea in the real estate business, and if you're in real estate, God bless you. It was hard for me. My mother was a realtor and all that stuff too, so I was like, okay, we'll go into this space. I'll bring some technology into it. I had met a business partner who I pitched to. She absolutely loved it. It was fantastic, and we started working on it together. We were co-founders. We had some really good early success. We got accepted in some really nice accelerators, got some funding, raised $250,000 pretty easily and pretty quickly based on the idea. Had a lot of friends and family involved, which put a lot of pressure on us, because about 100 of that 250 was friends and family. And these are uncles and dads and moms and stuff like that. So now you got the pressure of the entire, familial group on your back. And fast forward about a year, we got into the market. Memphis was difficult, but we really hit it big in Tulsa. Believe it or not, just like 2,000 sales inside of a couple of weeks, and things were really, really good. American Home Shield calls us up and says, "Hey, we want to sell your product for you." And we're like, "Great," because we have a salesperson of one, which is my co-founder. Marketing and sales was her area. We said, "Absolutely, this would be great." They had 357 salespeople. We went to their sales conference. We were blown away. People were stealing our technology, as they call us when they're on the airport, at the airplane home. Okay, hey, I stole one of your beacons. I'm like, yeah, I know you stole one of my beacons. Now take it back to your region and sell the crap out of it, right? So we had people that excited. Our main sponsor decides he's going to go to, this is in New Orleans, by the way, he decides he's going to go to is this being recorded? Yeah, a strip joint, we'll say it. Uses the company card and gets fired the next day. This is the guy that had my master service agreement on his desk 2 days before, but wanted to sign it after the sales conference to see how well we did. Now I have no contract with American Home Shield, and the guy, my main champion, gets fired. I find another champion, I scramble his replacement. That guy gets fired 2 months later. I go through this iteration until I finally get to the president and CEO. He's like, you know what? I don't want to partner with you, I want to buy you. Give me a number. Over about 2 months, we came up with about $6.5 million in a buyout. We weren't anything at that point, really. We had good sales, but not that great. He says, I'm going on vacation. We'll sign the paperwork when I get back. When he gets back, he gets fired. This is ServiceMaster, by the way. They do this quite often. They were restructuring. They wanted American Home Shield to go public. They brought in Rex Tibbins, who is the COO of Lyft, big major player. He comes in and says, all acquisitions and mergers are off the table. We're focusing on going public. Great. Okay, great. So then I start working with Terminex, another ServiceMaster family. They steal 3 of my ideas in a year. I am done. I have spent and chased this rabbit for a year. I've spent $125,000 doing it. My founder, who, by the way, at this point is now my girlfriend and fiance and live-in partner with her kid and my 2 kids. We've blended. We're a single household. Power got cut off probably 8 times that year, just from a variety of different things, of not being able to have enough money coming in the house. Got 3 mouths to feed. You can see the pressure. It's a little bit, right? So after she goes and gets a job in about a half a minute, I'm struggling to hold on to the business. I decide I can't do it anymore because I've been waking up. When she wakes up, I'm like, let's go to work. And then she leaves. I even made the bed while she was there. And then I pulled the bed sheet back. I got into it, and I laid in the fetal position for hours every day for 6 weeks. I mean, just depressed more than any time in my life. Then a friend found me, saved me, gave me a job, started coaching, doing things. You can hear it in my voice. I'm starting to crack up about this. It was a hard time. But out of that came an understanding of where I was at and where I needed to be. A year later, I married my co-founder. It's been the best successful story of my life. Best business I've ever started was my personal one with my co-founder, my wife, Chelsea, who's also an entrepreneur, which I recommend, by the way, if you can find an entrepreneur. To understand your craziness, you're probably better off. But that was an eye-opening experience of coming out of that, understanding that I was defining myself by every decision that I made that I thought was bad at the time. Many of those decisions weren't bad. They were the right decisions later. But waking up every morning to the point of where I couldn't figure out what to do with my just mental life, my physical life, much less my work life and money-making life, you really start to think about some very dramatic decisions. And that's when I was like, I'm scaring the shit out of myself now. And that's when I started seeking help. That's when I went back to therapy for the first time after about 10 years. I started looking at myself in a new lens. I started giving myself grace for the first time in a long time.
How long did it take you to get to therapy?
I'd say I was probably, I'd say I've been at this state of health since 2022. So it took me at least 2, if not 3 years to kind of figure those things out with a lot of help, a lot of study, and a lot of just looking in the mirror, which I hate doing, but looking in the mirror physically to look in the mirror mentally and see the inner Bryan and see where I need to start working. And a big part of it was asking for help. I mean, I think that was a big part of it was like someone saying, do you need help? Me saying, yes, for the first time. I've been a very independent, self-resilient person my whole life, but that was also a big part of it. I think that's why Hang on Health is such a great opportunity today, and I'll wrap it up here, because we are more willing, and it's showing right here, to talk about these things and to be vulnerable and to come close to crying or crying outright. I'm surprised I didn't just start bawling. I did good today, controlled myself. But that vulnerability is what is most important when you're also building a business and you want to build a culture and you want your employees or your teammates, your divas and divos to all feel like they're at a level of understanding that they can be themselves. Your customers will feel that. Everything starts to get, so when I started to change those things, that's when I started getting like work I never thought I could get. I started getting contracts. I started getting more and more customers and more people working for me. And it was this enlightening kind of thing of like, I got to lean into this mental health as opposed to pull away from it like I had most of my life.
Very powerful.
It was very heart-wrenching for a long time.
So how long did it take you before you could start talking about it?
I think that probably for me, because of ADHD and the autism that I have, it didn't take me very long, because once I realized that I should talk about it, it was like,
Is that why I'm so open and did this from my ADHD?
I absolutely, I mean, yes. I mean, if you want to pick it apart, I mean, it's like, ADHD people generally are consummate learners. We need information, we need data, we need a lot of things in our lives to make us not think about the demons, actually, the bad things that we can also think about, because we're planners. We think about every scenario. If you are saying that, you are starting to realize your own pathway through ADHD and understanding that too, it's because you're actually want to figure something out. And I think ADHD has gotten such a bad rap since the late 60s. When I was growing up in the early 70s, that even it cascaded to the 1990s and even up until just the 3 or 4 years ago. In fact, I think, to be crazy, TikTok has done a great job of actually opening up the conversation about ADHD and neurodivergence and everything else, because you can find your people that you want. Your algorithm is very neurodivergent, so it's going to feed into your neurodivergent, right? So, it's like those things. But it was not just me, I don't think. I think it was society started opening up to the conversation about mental health and mental awareness, and starting to understand that with my version of autism, it's not just the spectrum is redefined. It's not the way it used to be defined, and so on and so forth also. So once you can pinpoint these things, you can figure out how to work with those. And I think that's where you're at now too.
So I don't know as much about autism. I haven't researched that yet. Can you talk a little bit about how that has impacted your career or life? over time?
Yeah, I think it started off with an event. One of my best friends, when I was in my early 20s, said this at a toast, and I've never, ever, ever forgotten it. He's like, if you ever want to know the truth, whether you want to know it or not, ask Bryan. And I realized over the years, it's like, oh, well, that's just because I have a mouth that says most of what's on my mind. We used to call this Asperger's, and that's no longer really a good word and term, and I never liked it either. It was merely just someone who couldn't control basically their thoughts. And my mother did a really, really good job of suppressing it. And in the early 70s, and I'm not saying that's a good thing, I'm saying that was a bad thing, although I think it turned out to be a good thing for me in the end. Because my dad was very much an extrovert, my mother was an introvert. My mother is the one who has ADHD. She's also late diagnosed in their late 70s, basically in early 80s. And it was also a duh moment for me to her of saying, well, I know exactly where I get it from. I can pinpoint everyone, now that I know all mine, I can inventory yours too if you want. And she's like, no, not right now. I'll let my therapist do that. But yeah, I think it's also one of those things where the awareness of the autism spectrum is not a degrees of severity. It's actually a list of conditions, a list of different things. So you can kind of pinpoint, I do this, I do this, I do that. You don't have to be OCD to be, it's not one of those things where one has to have the other part. But my dad always taking me to do sales gigs, I think, and showing me that I could be an extrovert, even though I have I'm right on the line in Myers-Briggs, right? I'm right between E and I. But I can actually utilize and fall into both those sides too. So it's an understanding, and that's just been in the last couple of years that we understand autism more and actually introduced AUDHD, which is a crossover between autism, ASD, and ADHD. So it's knowledge now. It's really made me understand more what we can do with that.
So, Allie.
Follow up after that, right?
Yeah, so talked about, why don't we change the subject a little bit and talk about a time when you felt really lonely in your business?
Okay.
I think we've all been there.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Business, life.
Yes. So as I stated, that the first 4 to 5 years of my business, I was out with my head in a toilet cleaning. So I didn't know a lot of operational skills, a lot of business skills. And my company went from, in 2020, to 300,000 to 1.3 million by 2021. So by not giving up during that time, I had that tremendous growth.
You started it when?
Well, from 2020, I started it 10 years ago, so I 10x'd in 3 years. But from 2020, I went from 300,000 in revenue to 1.3 million in 2021. So you have different problems, apples to apples, it's a little different. So I'm like not using the same systems and things that I was using before. So I outsourced a business development company, and I'm not having a lot of experience with this, and being a Southern belle, very naive, building a small business from nothing, knowing that most of my time in building the business was spent in a bathroom cleaning. They had me focus on a lot of social media. I wrote a cookbook. I was working on my Instagram engagement. They promised me, oh, you can get a cooking show, Allie. You can be on reality TV. And I believed it. I'd been in this other world of cleaning, and then I get in this entrepreneur world of, oh, I'm a business owner. I can do all this. And it was just enough to take my finger off of my business for them to take advantage of me, and hundreds of thousands of dollars that we lost in the process from me just taking my focus off, worried about my ego, building my brand, building my business, saying, hey, I've worked for this, I've done all of this. So years, still to this point, we have a CFO that's still restructuring all of that, because that was a 2-year period. And during that time, I got clinically depressed. I had so much anxiety. I felt that my team could not trust me anymore. I've let this team come in, and look what they've done to us. We're 3 steps behind. There were times when I would get up in the morning and I would cry in the car and put on the face for them, but then I was in bed by 2 o'clock because you don't know what else you're gonna do. And it literally is like, we might have to shut the doors. And if it wasn't for high interest loans and shark loans and all of this to keep us through it, then I would have had to. And so that was definitely the loneliest part of my life, to have somebody take advantage of
not only being like a small business owner and starting it from nothing, from a dream that was created in the kitchen with your grandmother, to being a woman in business and being taken advantage of from men. And then you have 75 people that you've kept them jobs through 2020, which is unreal, and they expect you to keep going. Now there's 75 people, and you're the topic of conversation at their dinner tables. Like, it's all about Southern Domestic Divas, so you can't just close the doors. And I go to tons of doctors. Everybody tries to put you on medicine, but we always had this negative connotation about medicine. I was raised by two hippies that most likely I probably was ADHD, and I still don't know it to this day, but it was like, Allie, you're just so pretty, just do your thing, you'll be fine, And so it was never like a reality that I could even have that condition. And just to tell you how bad it is that I've had severe anxiety just coming to tell the story, because it's hard to relive it. It's hard to think about what you've been through, but I'm here and I overcame it. And I call it like these scars that you have, because when you experience anxiety or depression, your brain doesn't work the same as it used to. I'm not the person that I was, the naive person that I was. And unfortunately, it still affects me to this day, to where I could barely put my mascara on from my arms shaking, because I'm going to tell this story. And I've always been very positive, a light. People say, I get on social media to see you because you're bright light. And Tina has opened me up to sharing more of it. I've just sent her selfies the last 2 weeks, like, this happened and it's crushed my day. But you're so scared and vulnerable to share it. But if we don't share it, people won't know. And it looks like this picture perfect story of Allie and her divas, and she started cleaning. It's like, no, I almost went under, and I had to deal with shark loans to get to where I'm at. And I had to deal with all of these things. So I'm a different person today because of it. But a better, I say that $300,000 got me my PhD in business, because I will never take my finger off of it again. So that's what I count it to. You always have to have a positive on the other side of it.
Absolutely. I was going to say that you brought up the clinical depression. Same here. My mother also, same there. And I'm just trying to bring that up because it's hereditary. It happens. I mean, but I also bring this up because of what you just said. I think a lot of times, because someone can be clinical or is clinical depressed, the resiliency factor goes way up. I mean, there's also the other spectrum, that those that just can't take it anymore. Entrepreneurship and suicide are definitely two things that are attached to each other, unfortunately. But that clinical depression of like what the average entrepreneur who's understood depression can weather, it just makes others kind of pale in comparison to what they can weather. I hear things about people who go to their job every day and they're complaining about things. I'm like, yeah, I mean, get your power turned off, a few times, and you got your kids and you're a single dad and all these different things. You can't pay the bills because you're putting all the, because your business is struggling, and then come out of that the other end. That's kind of, you kind of look at it and go, well, I've got the tougher skin now. So I think the depression can be one of those things where we find coping mechanisms to come out of it, and that's a strength. And then we are also more resilient than the average bear, and I think that's a strength as well. So.
The coping mechanisms to come out of it, I think, can be very difficult. So I know for me, when I was feeling really depressed, you get into a state where, like, yeah, you want to be happy, but it's just easier to sit and play the victim. And it's really hard to do anything positive for me unless I was medicated. And then once I started to feel a little bit better, then I could be a little bit more positive. But was there a way that either of you kind of tried to come out of that, ideally without medication?
Work. I mean, a lot of times just work. Either it's work on yourself or something physical or something project-oriented.
So just hardcore
outlets.
Discipline.
Yeah, and I think
get up.
But I think the biggest part is starting to realize where you recognize the depression. Do I recognize it when I'm in the fetal position and can't get up out of bed, or do I recognize that I'm going into that stage, right? And I think that's where you become more, as you become more not mature, but mature with your depression, that you can kind of say, I'm starting to feel depressed, as opposed to I don't know what to do to get myself out of this level of depression.
So you nip it in the bud when you feel it coming on.
If you can. And that takes people ask,
Self-aware.
Bryan, what are tools and techniques? You got to figure those, a lot of them you got to figure out yourself. Because you're the only one here, right? There's believe it or not, other people aren't talking about you nearly as much as you think you are. That's happening here, right? You're projecting from here. You're deflecting from here. So understanding the triggers of and the feelings, the physical feelings of where I'm moving, if I'm moving into a depressive state, allows me to go, okay, well, I'm not doing that. I'm gonna go pick a hobby up and do that, or start a new business, or expand something, or just have a conversation with someone who cares and can hear me out.
Yeah, I would say feel what you're feeling, understand them, take the extra step to understand them, which is acknowledge them, then
Feel the feels.
understand them. Yep, feel the feels. And once you do understand them, ideally find a way to take that next step. Yeah. I know I don't like to talk about mine, because if I talk about it out loud, it makes it real. And I can just coast. But that's not helpful.
Not talking about it doesn't make it unreal, though.
Okay, touche. I never know where the question was that I started with.
Yeah, I think that something that keeps me on track are having coaches all around me. I have a trainer that shows up 2 times a week. I have a therapist that I go to once a week. I have a business coach. My team keeps me going, and routine. Like, my morning miracle routine is everything for me. And then when I was going through all that, it was God, it was praying constantly, praying, and having faith. Like, God, show me if this is your will for me. Just show me and work me through it. But I found when I put that team of coaches around me, and I don't have time to let myself get in that negative headspace, because you have so much accountability around you, and they still show up. Like, there's lots of workouts when I was going through all that where I cried through the entire workout, but I had a trainer that never quit on me, and that she showed up, and that got me started for my day, which got me out of the bed. Now, I'm not saying by 3 o'clock in the afternoon I wasn't back in the bed, but I think that's the hardest part, is not understanding yourself in the moment. Like, who are you right now, Allie? Who is this person to where yesterday you were on top of the world, but today you physically cannot get out of this bed? And I've had all of these natural hacks. I see like an energy healer, a life alignment coach. So we have every type of vitamin and supplement that is comparable to the Prozacs and the antidepressants of the world. And believe me, I take handfuls of them every day. And it could be as simple as, you need to get outside and take a walk, Allie, and you just need to turn your brain off for a minute and not get on social media and compare yourself or make yourself feel a certain way, because you're not living up to what everybody else is doing. And maybe through this, people will be more real. Maybe I'll share with y'all my really bad days when shit just didn't go right. And I don't understand, because those darn construction workers keep asking me to come back to do more cleans. I'm saying that because Tina's husband's in the back and we clean for him, and sharing those real stories to where more people can come forth and feel like if they are in the bed, hey, Allie seems to live a pretty perfect life, and she gets in the bed too. I can get up and get out and get moving.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a different type of inspiration that is just as important, if not more so, for your audience, or for any audience, I think.
Absolutely.
Does anybody in the audience have questions? Stories, feelings?
I'm curious how you differentiate your identity from your business.
Sure.
I don't think you do. I think that's part of your business. I think that's part
I
of your
don't.
business, right?
I don't, which when I want to
Right?
exit in 5 years might become a big issue.
Yeah.
So it is something that we're working on with my exit plan. I do have a future business plan after this to create a Southern Diva line that goes along with my cookbook and my pies and things like that. So I see myself in that role, but I get very tied up in the identity. I mean, I relate to myself as the logo. People around town know of me as the Southern Diva. They don't know of me as Allie Williamson. So I
didn't know your name for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, just call the Diva. She'll come. Maybe she'll bring a pie.
Yeah.
So I'm not the one to take advice on that because I don't know if I've done it too much to where I'm like living in my branding.
But I see a lot of entrepreneurs that are like that they actually have a brand around themselves and they build successful businesses within that brand, right? And that's what you do. I was the guy who was behind the green curtain for so many years, and just the tech guy or the nerd or but I was doing probably as much outside of the technology world around business development and everything else too, the sales, you name it, all that stuff. But it was still kind of hiding behind the business, always. In fact, I've had businesses where I never put myself as a CEO, except I was effectively CEO, but I put someone else above me, sometimes my dad, sometimes, it was great before, we both had this same last name because I'd put she'd be the CEO and be the face of the thing. But in the last 3 years, I've started building a brand around myself because of what I'm talking about right now and the coaching and the mentorship and everything else. So for me, and I think that's where Allie probably is too from hearing her, it's like, don't worry about separating yourself from the business, especially if the business is really a part of who you are internally, your soul, your gut, your makeup. In fact, lean into it. If it is something where the business is too much of a mental kind of noose around your neck or just kind of the thing that's hanging over your shoulders, then by all means, figure out the best ways to separate yourself from the everyday ideas of that the business is you and that you are a part of the business, right? And ultimately, you're always part of the business, but founders and CEOs have to be the business too. So I say be conscious about trying to separate the fact that the business isn't defining you either. And what happens to it is you're going to benefit from it one way or another, but it still doesn't have to be the definition of who you are. So don't let it be on a daily basis. Very difficult, very easy for me to say that. Very easy. Very difficult to implement, but still the right advice, I think.
Thanks for sharing today. Thanks for showing up. I feel like having these conversations in a public forum takes a lot of courage, a lot of vulnerability, and so why is this worth the conversation for y'all to show up? Like, I think we need 1,000 more of these conversations, or at least I need 1,000 more of these conversations. And yet, I feel like there's so much resistance. We're just gonna put on a positive face. We're just gonna pull ourselves up our bootstraps and go. And yet, entrepreneurship is so hard, right? Life right now is so complicated. The world is full of craziness and chaos. So why is this a conversation that was worth the three of y'all showing up and or you being?
Why'd you start hanging on health? Turn the table.
So you heard my story before about what the client did for me, and what I went through after that with, right when that happened, I went through the 7 grieving stages. First I was like, okay, it's fine, I'll solve it. And then I was mad, and then I was sad and bawling my eyes out, and then I was angry. And so I went through all of that and then turned into suicidal depression, and then turned into, or in addition, was diagnosed as having bipolar 2. And all of it stemmed from this woman that, in my business that screwed me over. No matter what I did, I saw it coming. I took the steps, and she still got by me. And I just felt like I looked around and I looked at all my other friends, and no other business owner was talking about what their challenges were. Everything was great. I can think of 3 people off the top of my head. And then I sit down, one-on-one, and you start to get in the convo, and they're like, oh yeah, this. And so I was like, okay, I'm not alone. And that was, when I realized that was really why I thought, and even when I started telling people my diagnoses, and they said, oh, my mom has that. Oh, my sister has that. And I was like, really? I had another girlfriend, and she said, Tina, I've been in your shoes. Like, if you feel like you're going to do something, call me. And nobody had ever suggested that to me before. Not that I couldn't go to somebody, but like I said earlier, I'm not gonna be forward and say, here's my issue, because it makes it real. But if it's somebody who's already been through it, that's a little different for me. So yeah, everything for me started as an entrepreneur, and that's why I wanted to help others, because I know that I wasn't alone when I started hearing it.
I think it's just long overdue, and the neurodivergent community decided that it's okay to start talking about this. I think more, I find a lot of things bad about social media, but I also try to find a lot of good things about social media. And one thing that even Facebook did was connect people from a long time that you haven't seen. Now it transitioned to, now you're connecting with people you have no idea who they are. But you're getting an aspect of their life, and they're talking about themselves, and you're talking about yourselves. So I think a lot of the stuff that's come out in the last couple of years has just been people feeling very suppressed about wanting to talk about themselves in a positive way because they're trying to figure out themselves. I'm not talking about it in a conceited, arrogant way. I'm saying wanting to find a tribe, wanting to find a group of people that you can associate with and more so resonate with. And I think that's important kind of word is resonance. You know, when you can resonate with someone, you're really at a deeper connection with them mentally, spiritually, religiously, however it is. But then you start to find that tribe is really, really large. And you go, shit, God, I had no idea that, when you start asking questions about inner monologue and inner dialogue and what's the voice that you see a person, and you're asking these questions now at like social events, it's like, did you see that study that so many people don't have inner monologue? I don't get that. And I was like, because you're neurodivergent and you're neurotypical, right? You don't hear anything, and God, I wish I could do that sometimes. And you hear everything, and I know what you're talking about, right? So it's like, and I could go into a lot of reasons why it was suppressed as a diagnosis for so many years. I mean, parents just didn't want to think their kids had ADHD, or they just popped Ritalin in their mouth, because that was the only thing that was diagnosable and prescribable at the time. So it was just years and years and decades of suppression of the entire community. And now we talk about everything, and people are very very embracing to talk, and they do that, right? And so I think that's one of the reasons why the timing is now.
So Tina and I were at a conference together, and I shared about my experience with a business development company. Well, about a year after that, I was in a personal relationship, and I took that relationship into the business, and we started a whole nother division of the company together. And throughout that, when you're a founder and you create something and you create all these systems, and it comes so deep to where it was like something that was led from your grandmother, and your branding and all of that, it's a part of you. Well, he wanted to change the culture. He wanted to change everything. I became a shell of myself coming out of this depression of being taken advantage of, and then letting someone into a company, 9 years of managing it yourself, and you're not only in an emotional destructive personal relationship, but this person is now putting their claws all over your business and affecting this culture that I've been building since I was out cleaning with these divas. And so I expressed some of that to Tina, that like, hey, I've been really going through it again, and you're like, how in the world does this happen again? That I'm back with the anxiety, that I'm now having to dissolve a business with someone. I'm having to work all that out. Not to mention that, a personal relationship was lost. When you're building a business, I didn't have many personal, like, boyfriends, relationships. I didn't have relationships. My head was down. I was worried about building the business. Then I finally get in a relationship, and I'm crazy enough to let them in the business, and then it just goes to shit. And so I expressed this to Tina, and I was going through some depression right then, and she shares with me about this and what she's doing, and I'm like, Tina, I just want to be more vulnerable. I want to share more of my story on social media. It's just, you're scared to change this image. So thank you for making me very brave, and thank y'all for listening. It wasn't easy to get up here today and to do this and to share and to be looked at in a different light, but hopefully it empowers somebody and it changes, and it
Thank you very much for doing that. I think I can speak on behalf of all of us that you did impact us and give us some valuable information and change everything for us.
Thank you.
What time is it? Can I ask one or two more quick questions?
We are at your mercy.
Sorry?
We're at your mercy, please.
great.
We're ready.
Music to an only child's ears.
God, that actually attracts a lot with yeah.
That explains that.
I like to say not spoiled, just blessed when they refer to only children.
Love it. Okay, so 93% of entrepreneurs who start companies will start more despite the mental health struggles they've already been through. Would you, well, I guess you've already started another company. Would you start another company after this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure the Flow Venture Labs is a company. It's really just, a bunch of different projects we put together. So I'm going to say the answer of like, am I going to have one product, one thing, build a whole company around it and everything else? Hell yeah. I mean, I went into 2021, when I started doing the ecosystem building, going, this is what I'll do for the rest of my life. This is good enough. And that didn't take long before the founder gene kind of found me after I'd been suppressing it. And now I'm just trying to figure out what problem statement to solve. But because I do want to get back into it, I want to see how better of a CEO I can be now in my 50s and after what I've shared with you and another 30 years of stories I didn't share with you. Just see if I'm like at my peak. And I believe I am. I believe I know enough, and I know about enough, and I know enough people. And I think that's probably the most important thing is I know way more people now than I did 3 years ago, that I can know where the supports are and the fence posts and the guide posts and everything else and the resources and the friends that I cherish that are also my colleagues and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm gonna start another one.
So then you kind of alluded to this, but what would you do differently in the next one to take care of yourself?
You're either going to love this or not. I have a rule that I live by that I don't know what I'm going to do. I just know what I can do. So I don't know. I don't know what I'll do different. I might do some things exactly the same because I'm a different person. And the decision didn't make sense then, but it makes sense now for different reasons. So I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. I just know what I can do.
That's a good answer.
James T.
Threw me
Kirk,
for a
J.J.
loop.
Abrams' reboot of Star Trek, that line came from there. That's not my line, by the way. So.
Allie, would you start another
I
company?
say abso-freaking-lutely. I would like to exit my business within the next 5 years and then start a retail line, a Southern Diva retail line. But wow, to know what we know now going into another business. And if I were to change anything, I would just ask for more help. I would build better banking relationships, more financial relationships. That was a huge struggle in the beginning, probably for a lot of people, is getting the capital you need just to keep the doors open, especially with the service-based business. So I definitely would do it, but knowing what I know now, having this PhD behind me, I'll be unstoppable.
Yes. Woohoo. All right, final question. Bryan, finish this statement. No matter what happens, no matter how I feel, I try to remind myself that.
I
feel like you have more than that in there.
Okay.
But that's good.
Worth and imposter syndrome are the opposites of each other. If you don't feel like you're worthy, then you will feel like you're an imposter.
Okay.
A lot of times. And so I'm not worthy of free things showered my way and sweepstakes and all these different things. I'm worthy of anything that I go after and can achieve myself. And I'm worthy of being in the rooms that I'm asked to be in. I'm worthy of being in the conversations I'm asked to be in. I'm worthy of the opportunities that are given to me when my clients ask me for things because I've earned them. And so worthiness, just kind of a self-worth.
I love it. Thank you for the description. And it's a long way from where you felt when you were in the bed.
Worthless.
Yeah.
And that's the difference.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mine would be the empowerment. If you know anything about my team, when you build a team over 10 years, and this is not only a team that's just in a cubicle pressing a computer, these are women that are out 10, 12 hours a day scrubbing toilets and doing that. So it becomes like empowerment. It becomes seeing them get better houses, seeing them buy cars, seeing them, their children doing more. So I think that that's really where it was, and that was what would keep me going, is that all these 75 women are depending on me. And I throw a lot of my efforts into the nonprofit world and the Hispanic community, and like, what just does it for me, we just partnered with Family Faith Medical, and now I can provide affordable health care for all of my divas and divos, and they get to go to the doctor And they don't spend more than $60 for a visit, because what it comes down to when you are in this service world, they just won't go to the doctor, and they'll just work through their sickness, and then their whole family's sick, and they can't afford it. But these are the things that like just bring me the ultimate joy, is my team, and they've become family, and seeing them grow and us transpire. I think that will be probably one of the hardest parts of exiting a business, is that family that you've grown, and just knowing that empowering these women.
Well, I love that. And being able to take care of your employees is
Gosh, I take care of
top.
them.
They are the
Nobody
most
asks,
important asset of any company.
nobody asks me to do anything. I'm taking everybody to the doctor in November and December. Everybody's getting flu shots.
Road
It's
trip.
just a joke. I'm like, all right.
School trip.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that is all I have for you. Any other remaining questions? Do you have a question? Okay.
First of all, thank you. You guys are
Thank you.
what you're sharing. I work in a company where it's a very, very big company, and everybody is expected to think and act like an entrepreneur. So what you're sharing is very relevant for whether it's entrepreneur or entrepreneurs. But my question is around, to get your voice back after you've been taken advantage of. Was there a point at which you needed to at least not confront, but talk to that person and say, listen, like, I need to use my words, and I need to, like, I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel so that this is a way of me moving past this. Was there anything like that?
No, I didn't get an opportunity. So I had a situation too, and it was all part of that same story, where I had to hire someone to build out this technology that I envisioned, and I chose poorly. And my IP got intertangled in some things. And I wanted, and really my wife is the one who I had to really suppress from saying what it was, because it was a female CEO, and if you know anything about female CEOs and female entrepreneurs, when one scorns the other, they just want to go right at it. And
I was about to be watching.
no,
I don't know where you're going with this.
And in hindsight, I mean, I know what I'm saying. I mean, in hindsight, I wish I wouldn't have suppressed her, right? I wish she would have said what she needed to say, because she probably would have been able to convey what I felt like I couldn't say better than I could. But I also realized later, looking back on that, and that's really what I'm getting to, is that no matter what I said, it wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to make a difference. It might have made a difference to me, but if you think deeply enough, am I really just trying to placate myself to make myself feel better because I made a mistake of trusting someone, or I did make a mistake, they just bamboozled me? That happens all the time. Because that person's not going to change. That person doesn't have the perspectives you do, the life that you do, the morals and the spirituality the levels that you have. They're their own bag of tricks, right? And it would only make you feel better, but it actually wouldn't change anything. So after I started realizing, like, I can't change people, I can only change myself. That's when I realized that many fights are just not worth fighting. In fact, I can move on much, much faster with that mentality than if I'm sitting there going, I wish I would have said this, or I'm glad I said this, but now this has happened, and now it's a big deal, and this, that, and the other. I think the high road is a really, really good road to take sometimes, and sometimes that's like personally, I'm going to take the high road with myself, not my low road, my high road, just because I don't want to deal with it.
I think acceptance is the biggest thing you can do to move on and to have good energy again. It might take you a minute to get there, but.
So with my situation, I would have loved the things I could have done to that office. But, you have to take the higher road, and then yeah, with a mop. Yeah, what you can accomplish with a mop. But you always have to take the higher road, because I've invested so much energy into it. Like, I cannot give this person, this company, any more of my energy. And what I always say is they'll read it one day, because I'll write a tell-all book. So like, if you want a little inspiration as a entrepreneur, you're like, oh yeah, I'll be able to tell my entire story and all of my struggles one day. But I never got the opportunity, never really wanted to, just wanted to move past it. And like Tina says, the acceptance that I did this. I let my team down. I let myself down. I now know that, like I say, my superpower is like I'm a black widow. I'm like very pretty. I'm easy to touch, but just as soon as you strike me, that PhD's coming back out because I'm now educated, and I now know because I've been taken advantage of. And it's just part of the story. I think just accepting that, like, this is part of the story. These scars within, that shaking of me putting the mascara on, that's just who I am. And I'm going to be even stronger to live through that. Because I'm powerful because I came through it.
Love it. Your new nickname, can it be Black Widow?
Black Widow. It's appropriate for Halloween. Huh?
There you go.
I just wanted to mention that as an entrepreneur working out of my home, without family in my home, the loneliness is, overwhelming. And after 28 years, my consulting business has just died for no reason. And, so I'm going through a really difficult time. And there are 3 groups in town I wanted to mention as resources because getting out of the house, like coming here today, there's 3 other groups for women. There's a Women in Technology Entrepreneurial Group that's just started up in Nashville. So if you are a female entrepreneur in the technology space, it's from the Women in Technology of Tennessee. Secondly, tomorrow I'm in a new women's mastermind class for entrepreneurs. It's free. You don't pay anything. We have it out at the Brentwood Library tomorrow at 11 a.m. for women if you're interested in being around other women talking about challenges of entrepreneurial. Perhaps not as vulnerable as this, but could be. And the third group, you all have great, all 3 of you, looks like another book about your journey and speaking. You package them together. Beth English has a speakers group that meets here at the Entrepreneurial Center once a month. I've forgotten the day, but if you Google, you can ask the NTC. They have it on not BC. So I think writing and speaking and telling your stories gets it out of you instead of it festering inside, the fear of the stories. But everybody's got a great story. So those are 3 resources I thought some of you all might be interested in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you want to email those to me, I can put them on socials and newsletter and website. Yes.
I just want to reiterate what everyone else said, and thank you so much for being vulnerable. I can only imagine how much courage that takes, but I also wanted to share, as I'm starting to build out my business, that is something that I've been confronted with, is just the courage to be vulnerable, to be honest, to be authentic, courage to be vulnerable. And I think, we're living in kind of a unique ecosystem with how important it often is as an entrepreneur to have a personal brand online. Authenticity is very important to me personally. So I'm curious if you have any recommendations for how you navigate being public figures and being vulnerable, being authentic with your story, but still feeling kind of safe while you do that.
I do a lot of sharing. Yeah, I do a lot of sharing of my story. So I think just like living through who you are, I do cooking videos, I do cleaning tips, I do decorating, I do all of this. And I've been made so much fun of with doing that. Like, Allie, why do you take the time to do it? Why are you building this brand? You're always on social media, like all the judgment. It's just removing all that judgment because I know what my 5-year plan is. I know that I'll have a products line, and I know that those people that have been following me since I started my business in my double garage. And I had to park all the workers up and down the street. And then Davidson County said, hey, Allie, you got too many people parked out here. So I started parking them at Hardee's and shuffling them in. Nobody ever understood, but I've been so authentic through all of that, hey, I started in a garage. Hey, I would stay up till midnight baking these pies because if I wouldn't have, I probably wouldn't have had any clients to go along with it. That my head was in a toilet, that I did gain 50 pounds when I started my business because I was so focused on doing it. And by sharing that, it becomes relatable. And recently, I feel like that I've been sharing so much positive, and you get awarded these things and you get this publicity with being an entrepreneur and a CEO, but that's rewarding on a sense, but people start to only see that, and they start to only see the good. So, I've been getting a lot of feedback from my inner circle, and they're like, Allie, you got to be more real again. You've got to share the real stuff. You've got to, this morning, I looked a complete hot mess,
but I filmed it because I was talking about mental health, and that's how I look at 4:45 in the morning when I'm going out to exercise. Let's be real. And so it's like getting on camera in those vulnerable moments, being in my bathrobe, cooking in front of people. That's what's saying, oh, she's relatable. I want to use her service, but just being like so true and sticking to that story. Like, Grandmother Hattie has gotten so much recognition for those cigarettes, but I created a story and I stuck to the story. And that's what's created the brand awareness.
I had an answer for this, and I needed to figure out the best way to start it. Because it has to do also with the result being imposter syndrome as well. But my advice is try to separate self from actions and activities. There are activities you don't let people know that you do in your home. And I mean, I'm not talking about strange activities. I'm just saying your personal life, the things you really don't share with other people. And then there's the other parts that you should share that people are resistant to share more of. And that's the vulnerability, that's the honesty, that's the side that is more true. I mean, anybody in this room probably has some celebrity, or maybe it's a loved one, maybe it's a CEO that you just really resonate because that person is very, very genuine, right? You can tell that the thoughts in their head are not filtered by should I say this or not, depending on how it's going to affect the way people think of me, right? And I think that's where you kind of draw the line, is you have to be the same person in the shadows that you are in the light, to a certain extent, to be able to share that level of vulnerability and that genuineness that other people can, I said this earlier, resonate with, they can attract to, they can personify. And then you find yourself in cycles not feeling like you're an imposter, because there's not actually a person that you're leaving that says, I have to now go be a different person here in this context. So it allows you to have that sense of self across the board. Again, you have your things that no one knows. Everyone has those. But everything else is about being honest with yourself and sharing what you feel constructively and being yourself. And I think when you transition to that, especially if you're building a company around your brand, that's where it needs to be. We're seeing all of Allie. I have not met Allie until today, and I can tell you, I feel I know her very well now because she has shared her inner makings and her thoughts and her things that are scaring me, and scaring her. And I hope that's something that you feel about me and Tina as well, that we are out here really sharing our truths, not because we're getting paid to or because it's fun, more so because we want to encourage everyone else to share their truths as well.
I would say one quick thing. I'm usually pretty authentic on social media, I want to say. I do tend to post more positive, but once I had the idea that I wanted to get the conversation going around mental health, I have a flaw in life that I take risks, and I don't think about it, I just do it. And I made the first video and put it all on the table and posted it and pinned it to my LinkedIn and pinned it to Instagram. And it wasn't until like 6 months later and I was like, is this gonna stop me from getting a job? Like, are people not gonna talk to me? And then I realized it's, going back to, I guess, I don't wanna say cliche, but well, if they don't want to work with me because of these reasons, then I don't want to work with them. So it really doesn't matter. And as far as I know, I actually never lost a job or an opportunity out of it. In fact, I got one right after it was posted, and I was completely honest with the CEO before he hired me, and he brought me on. And so, I guess I would say assess something and how you might feel about it, maybe how you might feel about it, but don't let it hold you back too much, because you still need to be you.